With growing geopolitical tension, the number of businesses that feel unprepared for the associated risk has also gone up. Here to talk about the latest global risk landscape report is BDO Risk Advisory National Leader Tarunesh Singh. Welcome, Tarunesh.
Good afternoon, Kate.
And can you outline some of the new geopolitical tensions and the risks for Kiwi businesses?
Yeah, of course. I think there's quite a lot going on, a lot happening across the world, and I don't think that many of these will come as a surprise or news to any of your readers. Unfortunately, I'm not even sure that I would call any of them new. But the ones that are top of mind, the ones that are certainly affecting Kiwi businesses, the war in Ukraine. That's about to hit its 9th month now, so certainly not the short event that everyone was hoping for, if it had to happen in the first place, of course. We've got volatile European markets and some political instability across Europe as well, and actually other parts of the world. A recent example is the Truss government, which, as we I think all famously know now, only lasted about 45 days and had a significant negative impact on the economy and the pound. Other challenges, one that particularly is impacting Kiwi businesses is some of the political and economic challenges across China's landscape at the moment, and then the downstream impact that it has on factories, output, supply chain, transportation, and the like. And of course, certainly not on the same scale, but New Zealand has its own election coming up next year as well. So, that brings with it some, I'm not sure if I'd say challenges, but it certainly does have an impact on how government acts and some of the policies that may or may not be passed in the next 12 months.
And what are some of the practical measures that businesses can take to mitigate these risks?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's an interesting area because, of course, almost all businesses can't, they don't have the ear of government, or they certainly can't knock on the door and directly impact what government does. However, what they can control is how they respond and how they act. And the key way that we advise our clients to tackle this area is to have a structured approach to risk management. And what that means is, very practically, actually pull together a risk profile for your business. What are the top, say, 20 risks currently facing your organization? What does that mean for your business, and what would the impact be if they actually materialized? And then you can take stock of what measures you actually have in place today to mitigate those particular risks. And of course, then identify what the gaps might be. And that allows you to put a really clear, actionable plan in place to address those risks. And I think risk, particularly in New Zealand, given the sort of nature of who we are and what our businesses are, we tend to shy away from risk management. We see it as a bit of a planning for failure. But in reality, risk is really just the other side of the strategy coin. It's those things that, if they were to materialize, could stand between us achieving our goals and not.
Now, was there anything that surprised you that came out in the report?
A couple of things, actually. One of the key ones that comes to mind is that actually 1/3 of respondents to the survey said that they were actually unprepared for the risks that stem directly from these geopolitical tensions that we're seeing. So, to put it bluntly, the measures that I just mentioned about having that structured approach to risk management and having a plan in place, they're not quite there yet. And 1/3 certainly is a large proportion of everyone that we surveyed. Another one is in relation to sustainability, climate change, and ESG, which is another area that was highlighted by our recent reports. 22% of respondents there said that they were, not so much unprepared, but they didn't view particularly climate change as a key risk factor for them over the next 12 months. But in contrast, certainly what we're seeing at BDO and across our client base, it's something that's really front of mind, something that's actually really impacting Kiwi businesses. So that number of 22% certainly did strike me as a bit surprising and a little bit low.
Yeah, ESG sort of seems like a hot topic at the moment. What are the risks of letting it sort of fall by the wayside?
Well, ESG is a very interesting area, and I think, again, we've seen a massive spotlight shone on that area over the last year or so, maybe 18 months. It's perhaps a slower burn, And so I think that could be playing into that 22% and the fact that some businesses might put it maybe as a tier 2 risk as opposed to a tier 1. And that's because, the economic environment that we're seeing, high inflation rates, high interest rates, and other economic challenges that are happening are here and now affecting businesses today, affecting the bottom line and the cash at bank today. Whereas ESG and particularly that climate change piece could be seen as a bit of a longer term issue, but it is critical. To your question of, well, what are the key challenges and that brings with it? Competitive advantage. We are very much seeing across all industries, across all sectors, that businesses, particularly consumers, are looking for organizations that are taking an active stance and have some real measures in place to address the climate change issue and the wider social and other governance issues as well that ESG encompasses. It's also a really, really key differentiator from a people perspective as well. Again, very similar to consumers, we're seeing that new candidates walking through the door looking for that potential job, again, want to see some meaningful action in this space. And it really, particularly, at the current time with the war on talent that we're seeing, it could be the difference between you getting that perfect candidate and you missing out and being under-resourced.
And something that surprised me was the mention of cyber attacks on supply chains. Can you tell me a wee bit about that?
Yeah. Again, we have very complex, very large global supply chains, not just for Kiwi businesses. Some might say we're at the end of the world supply chain, but across the world, and it's so interdependent. With the globalization we've seen, what's happened to manage those and make that all work is we've seen a high degree of digitization of these supply chains. But of course, where you have that increased technology, that increased digitization brings with it massive efficiency and economic benefits, but also is a vulnerability if not managed correctly and not controlled well. And so, some of the examples that we've seen are particularly ransomware attacks on suppliers across the supply chain, where effectively hackers have gone in, infected their networks with